Hi, and welcome to ThreatTraq Essentials. We're going to review some everyday cybersecurity lessons that we can learn from this week's ThreatTraq stories. John Hogeboom brought us a story about a vulnerability in XM software. That's software for email servers. Now, Mike Stair told us about this vulnerability on the show a couple weeks ago, but now we're seeing examples of it being exploited in the wild. What makes this so dangerous is that bad actors can take control of an entire machine simply by sending it an email with a malicious payload. And from there, they can recruit that server to be part of a botnet or basically do anything they want with it. As usual, our experts recommend that this software be patched immediately, right? You hear us say this every week. But another interesting item they talked about was the need to, even after you patch software, to take a look at your machine and see if it was infected before you patched it. Now, that's good advice for all of us. Even if you keep your software up to date, remember to routinely use your antivirus software to see if there is malware running on your computer, and also look for signs of any suspicious activity on your machine. Jim Clausing told us about a newly available Windows subsystem for Linux 2. It installs a Linux kernel on a Windows machine. Why would you want this? Well, if you're a developer who uses Linux a lot, this would enable you to use a lot of the features of Linux on Windows and have a lot of that functionality on the Windows machine. That's great, but there's also a downside. The downside is, now if you're a Windows administrator and you've installed this, in addition to having to be concerned about how to protect Windows and be knowledgeable about that, you now also have to be knowledgeable about how to protect Linux systems and what vulnerabilities you may be open to. Now, you may not be a system administrator, this may not apply to you directly, but there's a bigger lesson to learn here. Whenever you install new software or a new plugin on your machine, you're acquiring not only the features of that software or plugin, you're acquiring all its vulnerabilities also. Now, it may be impossible to keep up on all the vulnerabilities of all the software and plugins and little widgets that you put on your computer. So good advice is, do not install anything on your computer or mobile device unless you have to. If you don't need it, don't install it. Finally, Jonathan Gonzalez brought us a story about a recent study by researchers that showed that 20% of the most used Docker images contain high-risk vulnerabilities. Docker images are like pre-built templates of code that make developers' lives easier and allows them to program more efficiently. Now, if you're just starting out in coding or software development, you may routinely go on the web and go to a site and download snippets of code or open source code that you incorporate into your project to make lives easier. You have to be aware that anything that you download from the internet, any snippet of code, any Docker image, may have vulnerabilities or bugs in it. And those vulnerabilities and bugs will in turn end up in your software. So be aware of what you download from the internet. That's it for ThreatTraq Essentials. As always, you can click on the playlist below to take a deeper look at any of these stories. We'll see you next time.